Shabbat shalom, everybody. Pray. Yeshua is the Lord of the Sabbath, and we're reminded the Sabbath was made for man. It is the memorial of creation, for in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and in the seventh day he rested. So this is a memorial for our freedom from Egypt as well. And the Exodus was the great miracle of God for Israel's deliverance, a prototype of a greater deliverance to come through Messiah. The Sabbath is a day of liberty from all bondage, a day for healing. And Messiah invites us to come to him, all that labor and are heavy laden, and he will give us rest. He said, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So we're encouraged to not fail to respond in faith and to be excluded from entering into the rest of God that's provided through Yeshua. And we look forward to the age of rest to come when Yeshua shall rule over all the earth. We praise you, Father. We thank you for what you've done through Messiah. It's hard to comprehend, but we accept it by faith with thanksgiving and joy. Going through our 3-year Torah cycle right now, we are in the portion that talks about Joseph in Genesis 37. So if you'll open up your Bible, let's take a look at that real quick. Just a brief reading. Start with verse 1 of Genesis 37. It says, "And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought to his father their evil report." Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. Verse 4 says, "And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him, could not speak peaceably to him. Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him yet the more. And he said to them, 'Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood around about and made obeisance to my sheaf.' And his brothers said to him, 'Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?' And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream and told it his brothers, and said, 'Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me.' And he told it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, 'What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down ourselves to you, to the earth?' And his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying." All right, and it goes on to talk about how his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. I learned over the years that in this portion where it says to feed, it also has the meaning of to do evil. They did evil, and because they did evil, his father was sending Joseph to see how they were doing with the flock. You see the parable here. This is a prophetic foreshadowing, right? The father sends the son, go check on the flock, go check on your brothers and see what they're doing. Okay? And there's some hidden things here, which I'll share with you. First of all, where it talks about how they hated him, the Hebrew word here is vayisnu. They hated. That's the phrase. There are some embedded things here that are amazing, and that is Yeshua's name is embedded. It actually says in a 27-letter skip from left to right, from the Aleph in the phrase Vayisnu, it spells out Ach Yeshua. Brother Yeshua is embedded here. You also have in the word Shema in verse 6. There's a 214 letter skip from the Ayin that spells out Yeshua's name. And the adjacent letters are the word Tamim, which means spotless. Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Okay, all these things that were embedded and nobody knew about until just about 30 years ago. Right? Also, in the portion that talks about how the brothers were doing evil to the flock, in verse 14 where it says, "Go, I pray you, see whether it be well with your brothers and well with the flocks." Embedded there from the last mem is a 117 letter skip from right to left that spells out Mashiach. So in this chapter you have Yeshua's name twice, one of them saying brother Yeshua in the place of Joseph, and also the term Mashiach. Further commentary here. Verse 11 of 37 says his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. The Torah tells us that Jacob kept the matter in his mind. Rashi translates this to say his father waited for the matter. So in other words, this means that he was waiting and looking forward to when the dream would come true. In other words, Jacob believed the dreams. He kept the matter in his mind because he was waiting for the fulfillment of his son's dreams. The Lubavitcher Rebbe explains Jacob was waiting impatiently for Messiah, the son of Joseph, the precursor of Messiah, son of David. So as believers, we already know that Yeshua of Nazareth fulfills the roles of both Messiah, son of Joseph, and Messiah, son of David. He is the suffering servant whose suffering received remedy in his resurrection, when, in a sense, his sheaf stood upright in the midst of Israel, because he rose from the dead. And he's also the conquering son of David, whose star rises from the tribe of Judah. When our father Jacob heard Joseph's dreams, he waited for the matter to come true. He was waiting impatiently for the coming of Messiah. That's what the commentary tells us. And in verse 18 of that chapter, it said, when they saw him from a distance, before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. So his brothers wanted to kill Joseph as they saw him coming towards them with his pretty little coat. The Torah says that Joseph's brothers saw him approaching from a distance. This term alludes to the binding of Isaac, because the phrasing in Genesis 22 is the same. It says, on the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. So you learn in translation, it's one of the rules. It's called Gezer Shiva. You look for common phrases to see what the Torah can tell you more fully. So in that passage, the term from a distance alludes to the Messianic era. The book of Hebrews says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not receive the promises of the Messianic era, but it says they welcomed them from a distance. Hebrews 11:13. Also in Numbers 24:17, the prophet said, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. As Joseph approached his brothers, they conspired to put him to death. The rejection of Joseph, the agent sent by their father, presents a pattern to be followed in the nation's future rejection of the prophets and ultimately the rejection of our Messiah. The words of Matthew echo the plotting of the brothers. It says they plotted together to seize Yeshua by stealth and to kill him. Matthew 26, verses 3 and 4. And the Gospel of John sadly observes, he came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. John 1:11. Expressing the same sentiment, Peter rebuked his countrymen. He says, you disowned the Holy One and Righteous One, and you put him to death. You put to death the Prince of Life, he told them in Acts 3 in his first sermon. Why did the brothers plot to kill Joseph? The literal reading of the story explains that they resented the status and the prestige that Jacob lavished upon him. Jacob's favoritism incited jealousy, and Joseph's dreams only exacerbated their hatred. Some commentators offer a different motivation for the malice of the brothers. According to their explanation, the brothers prophetically knew about the future coming of Messiah, son of David, from a distance. They knew that the Messiah must come through the tribe of Judah, but they did not understand what was happening with their brother Joseph, how it was a prophetic picture. It appeared to them that Joseph wanted to usurp Judah's leadership and rebel against the future house of David. This spurious explanation is based on the story of Jeroboam's rebellion and the division of the kingdom. Well, this explanation has no literal credibility. The brothers certainly did not foresee all those things. Nonetheless, the explanation uniquely describes Jewish objections to Yeshua being the Messiah. In the days of Messiah, Yeshua, many Jews rejected him because they did not understand the mission of the suffering Messiah. They anticipated only the triumphant, kingly Messiah. Yeshua did not seem to fulfill those expectations. And the same is true today. Most Jewish people today are still unaware of the concept of Messiah, son of Joseph. The idea seems foreign to Judaism today. Many Jewish people have never heard the idea of a Messiah who suffers and dies. And anti-missionary rabbis object to Yeshua on the grounds that he did not fulfill the prophecies about the rise of the Davidic Messiah, such as ushering in the final redemption and an age of peace, universal peace worldwide. At the same time, they often fail to mention the expectations around the suffering Messiah, the son of Joseph. We're going to talk about some of those things today. Okay, so today I'm calling the teaching Meet Your Maker. I was doing a study this past week. I've got about 8 pages of notes here, so this should be a good teaching for everybody. All right, so Meet Your Maker. John's unique gospel. Very unique gospel. You know, the other 3 are called synoptic. Matthew, Mark, and Luke follow a chronological order, but John was not about to tell the story again. He wrote this later on in his life. It was the last gospel to be written. 90% of what you find in the other 3 gospels is not in John's gospel. Okay? There's no birth story in this gospel. There's no Sermon on the Mount. There's no parables. There's no exorcisms. And the Last Supper account does not talk about the bread and the wine. It's very unique, okay? These essentials in the other Gospels are not included. Instead, his Gospel is a record of unique conversations, of scenes, and of claims that were never mentioned in the other Gospels. And John does not give his name. He refers to himself as only the disciple whom Yeshua loved. Interesting. Okay? It was written, as I said, decades after the other 3, near the end of John's life, probably between the years of 85 and 95 AD. The first generation of believers was dying off. John's brother Jacob, the one that they call James in the New Testament, had already been killed. Peter had already been crucified. Paul had already been beheaded. The temple had been destroyed in 70 AD. The church was scattered, being persecuted, and they were growing further and further from the land where everything originated. He did not set out to repeat the story. It had already been told. He wrote to tell what it meant for you and for me. He says in John 20, verse 31, these things have been written so that you might believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of Elohim, and that believing you might possess life in his name. Okay? Now, authors, they'll give their reason for writing. Luke stated his reason as well. He said in the very first chapter, as he was writing to someone named Theophilus, he was writing an orderly historical account so that he could know the certainty of these things, so that all of us could know the certainty of these things. Okay? All three Gospels are written in a chronological fashion, and they are known as synoptic Gospels. But John's Gospel does not follow a chronological order until the very end, sometime around chapter 11 to 21. John is attempting to produce something within you, within the reader. The Greek word that the Greek translators used to describe that thing that he wanted to produce in you is pisteo. It's the Greek word that means to believe, or more accurately, to trust presently, to trust actively and intentionally. Okay, and this word is used nearly 100 times in the Greek New Testaments. Okay? Matthew opens with Yeshua's genealogy from Abraham. Mark opens with the baptism that begins at the Jordan River, the beginning of his public ministry. Luke opens his gospel with the conception of John the Baptist, his cousin, who was to be the forerunner and the final prophet to precede his appearance. But John does something completely different. John opens before creation. Okay? Now, Ezekiel had a vision, which is, it's an amazing thing about the four living creatures, and I just want to put this in as a little side note. The four living creatures that he saw, each one of them, the four had a different face upon them. And it's very insightful to see this, but there's a connection between the four Gospels and the four living creatures. Each one of those faces is an aspect of Messiah that is focused upon in the four Gospels. So let me just explain that to you. Ezekiel saw the four living creatures, and John saw it also. He saw the four living creatures later on in the book of Revelation. One of those creatures had the face of a lion. Lions represent kingship. Matthew's focus is on how Yeshua is the son of David and therefore qualified to be the king of Israel. He is the coming king, the lion. One of those four living creatures had the face of an ox. Interestingly, Mark's focus and his style of writing is to show that Messiah is the servant of God to do the will of the one who sent him. One of those living creatures had the face of a man. It's interesting that in Luke's gospel, his focus is on the Son of Man. That's a Messianic term, and he uses it more than anybody else. Son of Man. Messiah is fully man. This is very important to understand. He is the second Adam, as Paul explains to us in 1 Corinthians 15. You see, there's a paradox in the fall and the remedy that needed to be made to repair the damage. A man, it had to be a man to qualify in representing mankind in order to undo the damage of the first man. But, paradoxically, no descendant of Adam could ever qualify. So what do? Only God himself qualifies as worthy to pull it off. So herein lies the paradox and the need for the Creator himself to become one of us. This is another theological study for another time. But finally, we have the face of an eagle. An eagle represents divinity. John's focus, unlike any of the other Gospels, is on Messiah's divinity. Im anu el, as we're told in Isaiah 7:14. God with us. And here's a side note as well. Something else I thought about as I was doing this. A lot of people like to start with the New Testament to get their understanding of, reality and the truth, right? Starting with the New Testament is always the wrong approach, no matter what the theological topic is. It's the Old Testament, the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures. That's the only Bible that anybody ever had. What they call the Scriptures. You've got to go back to the Old Testament in order for you to have a proper understanding of everything. It's the only way to understand mankind's paradox since the fall. It's the only way to understand the remedy that is promised to fix the problem. And it's the only way that you can know the characteristics and the identifiers to look for in order to recognize the remedy, the Messiah, when he comes. And we are told those things. Take note of this. First of all, the question is who? Who's coming to fix this? Genesis 3:15. Her seed, Zerah, he shall crush your head, Satan. He shall crush your head, the woman's seed. The Alma, the young maiden, conceives and gives birth to a son, and shall call his name Immanuel, Isaiah 7:14. Plot thickens. Then we see in Isaiah 9, for a child is born unto us, a son is given unto us, and the rule is on his shoulder, and his name is called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty El, Mighty God, Father of Continuity, Prince of Peace, Isaiah 9:6. Zechariah 2:10 says, I, Yahweh speaking, I am coming and shall dwell in your midst. You've got to take note of these things. Isaiah 40 verse 3, the voice of one crying in the wilderness. When they asked John, who are you? What do you say about yourself? This is what he quoted. I am that voice of one crying in the wilderness. And get this, prepare the way of Yahweh. Isaiah 40, verse 3. Malachi 3:1, Yahweh speaking, I am sending my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. John the Baptist. Then suddenly the master you are seeking comes to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight. The messenger of the covenant? Okay, and the question of where is told to us. Where? Where is he going to show up? But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, you are little among the clans of Yehudah. Out of you shall come forth to me the one to become ruler in Israel. And his comings forth are from of old, from eternity. Micah 5:2. Okay, who, where, when? When? When's this going to happen? Daniel 9:26. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your set-apart city, to put an end to the transgression, to seal up sins, and to cover crookedness, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up vision and prophet, and to anoint the most set apart, the Messiah. And verse 26 also states that he will be cut off. Karath. And verse 26 also states that after his killing, the city and the sanctuary, Jerusalem and the temple, will be destroyed. Judaism teaches that the Torah is the written form of Hashem. That his word is him. So therefore, John's opening statement in 1 verse 1 was not a foreign concept to Jewish ears. He said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. That's acceptable in Jewish thought. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. John identifies Yeshua as being that word. Now, word in Greek is the word logos. And understand what logos means in Greek. Logos means the reason, the rationale, the principle behind the universe, the order and intelligence that holds everything together. And in Hebrew thought, God's word is not an abstract concept, but a creative force. We're told in Psalm 33:6, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made. The Hebrew word for word is davar. And get this, it doesn't just mean word, it means thing. Okay? So when God spoke, let there be, things manifested. And to this day, everything continues to do what he spoke it to do that one time. In John 1:14, John says, the word became flesh and pitched his tent among us, and we saw his esteem as of an only brought forth of a father, complete in favor and truth. John 1:14 is a theological collision point. This is where he identifies that logos, that word, that davar, as being Yeshua. We're being told that the mind that formed the universe put on a human body. We're being told that the limitless one who existed outside of time and space, the very force that holds every atom together, voluntarily became one of us. Hebrew mystic literature has a term for this. They call it tzimtzum, which is the concept of the uncontainable one containing himself. Or to put it in another way, contracting himself in order to create, because he's everywhere, right? Contracting himself in order to interact in time and space with man. And the Hebrew scriptures throughout the Tanakh give several examples where the Almighty dwells in multiple places simultaneously. He dwells in the heavens while his manifest presence dwells with men in the tent of meeting in the desert. And then later in Solomon's temple, in the Holy of Holies. When Yeshua had his conversation with Nicodemus, that's recorded in John chapter 3, Nicodemus comes to him at night. One of the things he tells him is this, John 3:13, no one has gone up into heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man, which is in heaven. Now, davar's synonym, the equivalent to that in Aramaic that John wrote his gospel in, the word is miltha. And Andrew Gabriel Roth in the English New Testament describes miltha this way. Miltha can mean word, it can mean substance, it can mean instance, and it means manifestation. So John tells us that this miltha, translated as logos in the Greek, is not an idea, is not a force or a principle. It is a person. It is the person of Yeshua the Messiah, the Word, the substance, the instance, the manifestation of God. Rather than introducing Yeshua as a baby or a man who steps into a river, John introduces him as the reason that everything exists. He's only 3 verses into his gospel, and the scale of the claim is already larger than anything the other 3 gospels attempted in their opening chapter. And then after the prologue, John makes another grammatical choice that also serves to separate his gospel from the others. There's 2 Greek words that are used in the Gospels to describe Yeshua's miracles. We find the word dunamis. We get the word dynamite from that in our English. Dunamis is what's used in Matthew, in Mark, and in Luke when Yeshua displays a work of wonder. This word is never found in the Greek translations of John's Gospel. When a miracle is recorded in the Gospel of John, we find a different word. That word is semeion. And semeion translates to a sign. Okay? So dunamis says to the reader, be amazed. Wow. Look at this. Look what he did. But semeion says, look further. Look past the event to the person who did it. In essence, a miracle points to itself. But a sign points you to a destination. John selects 7 of these semeion events. You ready? Here they are. Water to wine, chapter 2, verses 1 through. Healing from a distance of miles, chapter 4, 46 through 54. 38-year lame man healed, chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. Feeding 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish, chapter 6, verses 1 through 15. Walking on water, chapter 6, 16 through 21. A born blind man given sight, 1 through 41. And then finally, Lazarus, a man 4 days dead, resurrected. Chapter 11, verses 1 through 44. There's an escalation. Remember, it's not a chronological order. So John puts these in an escalating way. And the escalation is deliberate. John is showing that Yeshua has authority over every aspect of reality. Okay? Water to wine. He has authority over substance. He changes it. Healing from a distance of miles. It doesn't limit or hinder his power and authority. A man 38 years lame, time, decades of disability are instantaneously healed. Feeding 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He commands the multiplying of molecules to produce fish and bread to feed thousands. Walking on water. He has command over the laws of nature and physics and the physics of water. A born blind man given sight. Biology, DNA, doesn't matter. Whatever the problem was, the defect at birth, he removes it in an instant. And finally, a dead man, 4 days dead, he reverses death itself. Each sign reaches further than the last. Yet John builds a case, and it isn't this. This is not his case. Wow, look at the impressive things Yeshua can do. No. The case is, this person has authority over every category of reality. What kind of person has that kind of authority? And then, John's gospel does something the other gospels don't do. After each sign, John records a discourse where Yeshua explains what the sign means. When the bread is multiplied, he states, Ena na, I am the bread of life. John 6:35. Ena na is Aramaic for I am. He says, I am the bread of life. Just before he heals the man born blind, he stated, I am the light of the world. He said it in John 8:12 and also 9:5. At Lazarus' resurrection, he states, I am the resurrection and the life. 11:25. So the Simeon, the sign, is the door that Yeshua walks you through with a claim about himself that the miracle by itself could never carry. And look what happens to the people. It's a sword that divides. Look what happens to the crowds as the signs progress. At the wedding in Cana, it says that his disciples believed. They pisteo. They believed. John 2:11. After the feeding of the 5,000, the crowd went wild. They wanted to make him their king by force. He had to go away. Because they were going to make him king. You're king now, buddy. John 9:34. After the healing of the blind man, the priests cast the blind man out of the synagogue. And after Lazarus' resurrection, the priests plotted to have Yeshua and Lazarus killed. The sign serves as a sword that divides. The more clearly Yeshua reveals who he is, the more sharply people divide between those who move toward him and those who move away. But John is constructing an argument, an escalating signpost that demands a verdict. Hearts are revealed as the signs increase in intensity. All right, now I want to talk to you about the 7 I am statements that Yeshua makes. 7 I am statements that you find in the Gospel of John. The first one is, I am the bread of life. John 6:35. Second one is, I am the light of the world. 8:12. Third, I am the door. 10:7. I am the good shepherd. 10:11. I am the resurrection and the life. 11:25. I am the way, the truth, and the life. 14:6. And then finally, 7, I am the true vine. John 15:1. Each of the above 7 I am statements connect Yeshua to vital and basic necessities for mankind. Man needs sustenance, bread. Man needs light. Man needs direction, door. Man needs guidance, good shepherd. And finally, man needs immortality. Man doesn't want to just die and that's it. We want to live, right? And he is the resurrection and the life. As I said, in Aramaic, you say enah. Anyone can say enah, since it simply means I am. Just like ani in Hebrew, okay? However, 97% of the time that ani is spoken in the Tanakh, it is divine speech from the mouth of Yahweh. The other 3% are men. One of them being Joseph when he revealed himself to his 11 brothers. Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. Your brother, right? The Greek translators of the Septuagint, that's the translation of the Hebrew scriptures back in about 250 BC, when they translated ani from Hebrew, they went with the term ego eimi. Okay? When they knew it to be divine speech. Not every time, but only when they knew that Yahweh was speaking, they said ego eimi. Okay? Now, this is the exact phrase found in the Septuagint at the account of the burning bush in Exodus 3:14. Please listen to this. This is amazing, okay? The Greek translators of the Septuagint went with ego eimi when they saw ahaya asher ahaya, I am that I am, or I will be what I will be, right? Ego eimi. This is an emphatic grammatical statement by the translators. Eimi by itself is I am. But by adding ego in front of it, it's like us saying in English, I am I myself. It's a little redundant. Okay? It did that on purpose. Now, interestingly, the Greek New Testament translators decided to go with the same phrase, ego eimi, every single time Yeshua said enah. I am myself. I myself. Why did they do that? Because they understood who he was. When you're walking on water, he's been walking on water recently. Yeshua is walking on water and they're terrified, right? They think he's a ghost. Right? What does he say to them? He says, I am. Don't be afraid. That's odd. Well, we know you are. Why'd you say I am before that? Okay, that's one of the standalone I ams. It's John 6:20. I am, do not be afraid. Your English Bible has an italicized E. It's italicized because it's not there. It's not in the Aramaic. It's not in the Greek. He said, I am, do not be afraid. In John 8:24, when he was speaking to the religious leaders, he said, if you don't believe that I am, you will die in your sins. Well, that's a little strange. What? I mean, I can see you. I can see that you are. What are you trying to tell me? The Greek translators went with ego and me. Now, when he said, before Abraham was born, this is the third standalone I am. Before Abraham was born, I am. Now, in this particular verse, the Aramaic phrase is not ena na. It is ena ethe. An emphatic phrase that could not be spoken by just anyone without them committing blasphemy. You and I cannot say ena ethe. It is essentially the equivalent of saying ahaya, asher, ahaya. I am that I am. There was absolutely no ambiguity in this phrase. The reaction of the religious leaders makes this self-evident. John records that they picked up stones to stone him immediately, which was the common practice for putting a man to death for blasphemy. Yeshua then performed a wonder because he disappeared from them without a trace. Similar to when the crowd attempted to push him off a cliff at the beginning of his ministry. He just walked away. There was a set time for him to die. And it was not that day, nor was it to be in that way. And he was in control of everything. Now the final standalone I am, in John chapter 18, verses 4 through 6, the final time that Yeshua says, ena na, was when the temple guards were sent to arrest him in the garden. It says, Yeshua then, knowing all that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, who do you seek? And they answered him, Yeshua of Nazareth. And Yeshua said to them, ena na. And it says, when therefore he said to them, I am, they drew back and fell to the ground. Here we see where the creator and sustainer of all things speaks his final ena na. And it delivered such a force that all the men who came to arrest him fell back onto the ground. I'm going to close with this. I'm going to read a portion to you from John chapter 20. Starting with verse 19. Now when it was evening, on that day, the first of the week, the doors were shut where the disciples were because of the disciples' fear of the Yahudians. Yeshua came and stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. He said this and showed them his hands and his side, and the disciples rejoiced that they had seen our master. And Yeshua said to them again, peace be with you. As my Father has sent me, I also send you. And when he said these things, he breathed on them and said to them, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. If you forgive a man's sins, they will be forgiven. And if you retain the sin of a man, they will be retained. Now, Thomas, one of the 12, who was called the twin, was not there with them when Yeshua came. And the disciples told him, we have seen our master. But he said to them, unless I see the places of the nails in his hands, and I place my fingers in them, and I stretch forth my hand in his side, I will not believe. And after that, 8 days, after 8 days, the disciples were again inside, and Tuma was with them. And Yeshua came while the doors were locked, and stood in the midst and said to them, peace be with you. And he said to Thomas, place your finger here and see my hands, and place your hand and stretch it in my side, and do not be an unbeliever, but a believer. And Thomas answered and said to him, my master and my Elohim. Yeshua said to him, now that you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who do not see me and believe. Now Yeshua did many other miracles before his disciples that are not written in this book. Indeed, these things are but written that you might believe that Yeshua is the Mashiach, the Son of Elohim, and when you believe, you might have in his name life that is eternal.